college careers, but that's why we made them 7 chunks long, so we could remember them. Any irrelevant information, we should be able to dump. He could never dump anything. His brain was also 2/3 larger. His head, was bigger, and his brain was bigger. But it's because all that information. And he died at, I think it was 55, but I'm not positive on that. But if you've ever watched, it's super fascinating. He got into power and control struggles all the time. He had tantrums still when presenting, when he just needed a moment to unwind. People asked him in one of the question seminars that we were in when we were in Billings, what day of the year was Jesus Christ born? And regardless of any religious affiliation, I'm not trying to make any suggestions here. He said, "You're trying to trick me." And the reason is it's debated. It's never been officially written in print, depending on what religious belief you have. It's never been fully written. And so he started singing a line from Jesus Christ, the Superstar musical. And he started belting that. And people were like, "What's he doing?" I said, "He's paralleling because someone said to him, if you don't know the answer, find something close to parallel and then go ahead and exercise that something close." And that's exactly what he was doing. And he started singing that. And they're like, "What's going on?" And that's what it was, because he couldn't answer their question, because it's never been like a specific, for sure this is the day of the week that he was born. So seriously, like, he grabbed my name tag, he asked me how old I was, and at the time I wasn't obviously as old as I am now. I was 31, and I said, or 30 something, I don't even remember. And he said, "Oh, well, May, whatever the end of our school year is, like May 16th, this year is an important date for you," because he knew he was presenting to educators. So he put me in the same category of 30 years in, then retire, and that sort of thing. So he told me the day and the year that would be when I'd be done with, and I could retire and have fun. And I'm thinking, I'm retiring before that? No. But he just put me kind of in that category of that sort of thing. Absolutely fascinating, but would get stuck in these power and control things all the time. So co-instruct grading homework already done for your kiddos and resources and so forth. When they have terrible handwriting, they can't get the mechanics of the handwriting out, give them a spelling list done, give them a red pen and say, circle the ones that are wrong. What do you care about down the road? That they're typing a paper and that they realize that this is what's not right. And that squiggly line on Macs or PCs is going to tell them that, right? So we continuously fight the fight. If I see a 14-year-old with tying their shoes as a goal on their IEP again, I'm going to scream and throw the IEP at the person, because obviously our motor skills are not there to tie our shoes. They make Velcro. They make things that help that situation along where that person doesn't have to be so frustrated. I have acroglassed. I've done so many like shoe tying boards, things like that to help people, and I'm like, that's it. How many of us have slip-on shoes on today? Seriously, just take a study. If we're doing hiking boots, if we're doing other things, great. But literally, there's other options there. And do we want to waste that cognitive power there, or in other areas that are more important, like communicating your needs with them right now? Let me know what you need. So anyway, have them help others. They're your great co-teachers, but you got to make sure they're not too bossy and they don't overtake. That make sense? All right, sensory input. Jawbone. I already told you guys about this. You know about the joint compressions, the brushing? Am I talking about stuff? I practice with a pediatric occupational therapist and a speech therapist too. And so I do a lot of feeding therapy with kids, stuff where our kids don't want to eat certain textures because they just can't lateralize their tongue to really get the stuff moved around and down. The little girl I was working with, 3-year-old girl, severe behaviors, head banging, whole 9 yards as she was younger. She's come out of a lot of that now. She's in 4th grade now, actually with very little support. But when I met her in preschool, you guys, they had spaghetti as a snack, and she ate all the noodles right down. Your opiate addiction type thing we talked about. Ate all the noodles right down and literally went to sleep with both of her cheeks pocketed full of hamburger meat. And then has a tantrum and begins screaming, and I'm like, what's that? What's in the side of her mouth? Because all I can think of now is she's going to aspirate and hurt herself. So I do a quick finger sweep, and here's hamburger from 3 hours ago. And I'm like, thank goodness I was in preschool that day, because they didn't even know she was doing that. And I guarantee you, with any chewy substance that she couldn't get down and lateralize her tongue to really get, it's motor planning. It's when you have someone with apraxia, they have really tough time doing that. I've cut milk duds into quarters. This sounds bad, but had prompted kids' hands down and let them go. to get it, because once that starts, the right and left halves of your brain are coordinated. You know when you're in kindergarten and you watch kids cut and they're like, I need that. That's motor planning. You want that going on. The left and right halves of your brain are coordinating things. You want that happening. And so this kiddo is so, this is the right side of my body, this is the left, and I love this individual, but this is it. They will not cross midline. Valovisics, things like that. Putting their juice cup when they're infants on this side and letting them reach across is still, it's making both halves of your brain go like this instead of, nope, here's my midline, everything I do on this side, I stay on this side, everything I do on this side, I stay on this side. 14-year-old young man I work with, I've worked with him since he was 2, will not cross his legs anymore to put a shoe on because he is that dominant on right-left side separation. And we're trying to get him to, we're trying to get him to clean at a health club and collect things at a health club, and he won't cross his body to reach for things. And that's something you can start with when they're very, very young. And I've seen little, 16 months is the youngest kiddo on my caseload. 65 is the oldest individual. So there's like this whole realm of things to work on when they're that young. So think about sensory. In other words, it feels better to rock back and forth, to hit my head, to drown you out and hit, than it does to do anything else right now. I have a little guy who's going to have his jaw wired if he doesn't stop. He pops it out, he has TMJ, and then pushes it up so hard he's cracking it right here. And it's because he's seeking that input on this joint receptor. So we have to find a replacement behavior for him. And for him in particular, the thing that worked the best was some jewelry from the Natural Baby Company, but we bought the good stuff on a hemp necklace so he could stick that in his mouth and chew on it so he didn't unhinge his jaw and pop it. Right? Those T-bars are great for a little bit, but they look like a T-bar. At some point, they want to fit in with what their peers are wearing and what they're seeing and doing. So just think about this particular individual. I do things like walkabout paths in the classroom all the time, marshmallow feet or tiptoe feet, where they can use big, quiet feet, or tiptoe, 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 and that's how they go from circle to the next center, to the next thing, to the next. And you're then giving them that sensory. One of the other big misses, I told you sensory is a big miss, is people will be sitting in a chair eating a snack, and we do this here too. And to me, that's one of the best times to give them sensory input. Because they're eating a snack, they're talking, there's nothing real challenging academically, so they should be sitting in a ball chair while they're doing it. They should be getting that weighted lap pad while they're doing it, and then you go to your other activities afterwards. But that's a really good collective time. But what do? We're like, nope, we're all sitting and eating, and we're all in our hard chairs, and then they get up, and they're all wiggly and won't sit and work because we just sat and ate. So just think about those times as far as when we need those structured movement breaks for our kids, because it really makes a big difference here with their behavior. As it does, I swam this morning, I swam at the hot springs, and it was packed, by the way, because it's Veterans Day. But that's my sensory input for the day. Right? That's what I did. I swam 50 laps. That's what I like to do to just try to decompress, and that sort of thing. I was hoping it would be less busy, but no go there. So everyone has a sensory system. It's and I think you guys know about this, but you can have something, maybe you don't, I don't know, but called sensory integration dysfunction. Occupational therapist has to diagnose this. And it is when, like my little kid who pops his jaw and so forth, has no other diagnosis but this. So that means really in school, no other services. He's a RTI 504 kid because he doesn't qualify under speech and language. He doesn't qualify as a child with other health impaired. He doesn't qualify, but he has a ton of sensory needs. The kiddo I told you about on the stool that jumped off backwards and all that, and what he ended up having, they wanted to diagnose him as severely emotionally disturbed. What he ended up having was sensory integration dysfunction. When he went to someone sensory integration trained, that's what we found out. You have to have an occupational therapist who has that certification to diagnose this, okay? So what that means for schools is they're going to need some movement. They're going to need some walkabout. They need to talk to great reg ed teachers and say this is what we need for their sensory systems to be able to. So sensory integration dysfunction is either overreactive or underreactive in all your senses, so it can happen in all of them. I had a 12-year-old girl go to Red Lobster for Lobster Fest in Billings not too long ago, and she literally ended up fetal position under the table, like sucking her thumb, and her mom said, I've taken her to Billings Deaconess. I don't know what else to do right now, Shauna. Guess what it was? Think about it. Crappy lobster, sorry, that's on TV now, but not good lobster. I don't know if we ever have good lobster in Montana. I mean, we're kind of landlocked. But anyway, okay, so not great lobster. The cracks, the smells, it was packed. There wasn't a seat in the house, And she literally felt like she was going insane. And I said, honey, you were having sensory overload. I just started working with this family. Mom said she has lots of behaviors when things get crowded, football games, stuff like that she can't do real well. And I'm like, oh boy, I think it's maybe more along this line. And they're like, why has no one, Mayo Clinic, why was the only other clinic that told her about that? But she had been to 3 other specialists out of state to try to figure out what was going on. In the meantime, we're going to give psychotropic drugs to a 12-year-old who's fetal position in Red Lobster because of sensory? Are you kidding me? There's brushing, there's heavy weighted blankets, there's all of this. So think about all your senses. So hearing, taste, touch, smell, what did I forget?
Yeah. Oh, wait.
No, there's one, there's 5. I usually do this just like this. Sight, done. Which we've already talked about, can be over or under-reactive to different stimuli. Does that make sense? So if you're overreactive to proprioreceptive touch, that's that deep input touch, we have an inoperative pole in one of the schools that I consult in. It's a pole in the middle of the playground, which stinks, because kids hit it, as they're running, they don't even see that it's there. So the principal says to me, so I want to do something different with this pole. And I'm like, well, cut it down. It's my very first answer. And he's like, no, Shauna, think about sensory. And I'm like, all right, then let's wrap it. So we wrapped it with 4 yoga mats. It's now our hug-a-pole. And then when the kids want to pile drive each other on the playground, they go up and in all fours they're hugging this thing. And in the principal's office, he has a list of people who can do checks on the hug-a-pole, how many trips they took today. Do you know it's decreased the principal referrals by 60% because they have an outlet for that deep pressure they're seeking. And often, sorry for guys in here, but often it's your little boys who want that movement and that physicality, and some of them are in AAU wrestling. So guess when they get it? Outside of school, but then they can't quite figure out how to get it, and then the worst thing you can do for that kid is take his recess, right? You all know that, I'm pretty sure I'm preaching there to everyone, but the worst thing you can do for that sensory kiddo is take his recess. Why?
Doesn't have an outlet.
No outlet. You shot yourself in the foot right there, because I guarantee you then by 10, 11, when recess is done, you're toast. But you got to give them an appropriate way to do that. We have put a pad on a wall with a bolster attached to it. You guys know what the bolsters are? The big round kind of foamy things, and the kids can push against that, but not me. You don't push people, you push that. That sort of thing is a replacement for some of this sensory, okay? Does that make sense to you guys? All right. So we're almost out of this section, and we're going to take a potty break. So I'm sure everyone could use a moment to just walk around and so forth. Sensory maintained behaviors can be addressed in a variety of ways. Look at whether the individual is seeking or avoiding different sensations. I have a great little chart I can send you guys, of different ways to get sensory input in the classroom. I have a sensory profile I'm happy to share with you on is a child under or overreactive to different stimuli. It's from Rebecca Beal, who's an occupational therapist nationally recognized, and you'll see her copyrights on there and everything, but it's a nice little checklist for families to check off. Oftentimes, that mom, I can't not tell you how relieved that Red Lobster mom was to know that this was not mental degradation in her daughter, but it was a sensory need that she exhibited. So the other thing we did with her, if she ever goes to restaurants now, like any fish restaurants, is we used just some doTERRA oil, some Balance, and some stuff like that, so it would block that awful fish smell as she walked in. And then she has earbuds for if the crunching gets, because think about it, right? Like crunching, snapping, popping, all of those things. Simple accommodations for her where she can successfully go out to dinner now with her family and not feel like she needs to go under the desk. I mean, that's your most basic, you guys, that's your most visceral, I think you all know that, but sign of mental illness is literally rocking under something hiding. That's where you hit it, at the bottom, and that's what she did in that situation. So these things are fun to find when they're that simple. A lot of our kiddos have all 5 of these circles, which is what the second half of all this is for. So sensory maintained behavior, sensory integration dysfunction, which I just told you about. Tags in clothes, tight shoes, loose shoes, seams of socks. I didn't even know socks had seams till about 4 years ago when I was sitting at Christmas with my family and I had my feet up and I had one sock the right way, and my sister is she's awesome, but she notices these things and I don't. Right foot's up and it's backwards, it's inside out. I'm like, what are you talking? She's like, you have one sock right side in and one sock inside out. I never noticed, I have really bad feet. Figure if I have socks on, I'm good to go. It just doesn't bother me. But a lot of our kids will come in off the playground and they're like, what is that? What is that? And they're so dysregulated because there's a little speck of a wood chip or something in their sock that you've got to get out because they're not going to focus on math till you help them with that. Let's do a foot check. Let's check it out. And brushing helps that. Do you guys know about the Wilbarger brushing stuff? The W's and the little soft surgical brush? Things like that affect it. Kids who, my home consults where they will not wash their hair, cut their hair, will do brushing first, and it desensitizes you to those stimuli of, which really are invasive. Think about a toothbrush, really? Plastic thing with bristles that I'm going to rub back and forth for no apparent reason. Can't tell a difference when I get out. And when you're our age, you can, but as a little kid, what's the difference there? Well, you have to do it because the dentist said so. He's the bad guy right now. You know, like, what do you do there to really get someone engaged and see how the white and shiny? No, they don't look much different, right? And my gums might be bleeding now. Thanks, Mom or Dad. And it's a hard sensory thing to really get a kid to do, right? So just think about those things. They all tight shoes, no shoes. I've had lots of emails about no shoes lately with things getting, going from warm to cold now. Kids are coming in not wanting shoes on, and because, we're freezing now and we kind of need them on. So, and that's another whole, brushing to desensitize can help that too. Okay, medical variables, and then our break here. Seizure disorders, diet concerns, allergies, sleep disorders. I have a kiddo who screamed the other day in my office, and literally her tonsils are touching. She's not sick right now. She's not doing anything. I said to Mom, call Pepper. Hennion is their local pediatrician, and I said, you've got to have her look at those. That's not good. Mom's like, well, she snores a lot when she sleeps. She's dysregulated when she sleeps. I'm like, I'm not a tonsil taker-outer normally, but when they're touching in the back, I mean, literally, touching, and she's screaming at you, you're going, and there's some trouble she has with lots of different things that go to that. So it's something to rule out. It's a medical variable to check off. Before I start behavior modding, this, that, the other thing, I need to figure out if she's really feeling okay, right? Okay. I need a little oxygen. Carefully track and document the occurrences, and I have so many different sheets, and I just did a presentation in Kalispell. We actually did it via internet, and I had all of our school psychs there and all of our people doing daily documentation there, which was awesome, and we went through this. I have a lot of systems here. I didn't put this information in because I felt like it'd be overwhelming for what we're doing. Not that anyone can't do it, just that oh gosh, data now too, Shauna. But the biggest thing is if you have physical aggression to self or others, we need a real detailed documentation of that. If you've got a kiddo who's physically hitting himself repetitively, if they are hitting others repetitively, we need to know, because those are the two things that are definitely going to get you fired from a job someday. I don't care where we're trying to help this person live, work, function. Those are the two things, and their system is telling us something. Guys, for your kiddos that do not speak to you, just always remember that behavior is their words. I cannot undersay that and overstress that fact because it's so true. They cannot speak to me, so I'm watching everything they're doing to try to figure out what this really truly is right now. And those are the things that we look at, medically. I just talked to a principal this morning, and he said to me, this is what we've got. This kiddo's 16 now, not a lot of early intervention, moved into us out of state. Here's what's happening, Shauna. He's literally tearing apart rooms. We're not sure how to help him. I said, does Mom know when he comes in if it's been a rough night? Yep. I said, do you guys have that information? Nope. I said, all right, step one is just saying, did they eat breakfast? Light, medium, or full breakfast? What sort of level of intervention did you have to give them to get out of the door? Full hand-over-hand prompting or totally independent? Great. Now, I know how to structure my day based on the way they've come in. And if they don't get a note from home, you write right across it, no note from home. But that school home, back and forth, I hate that stuff, is done then because no note from Mom. I don't know. So I'm starting out with what I can see right now, and I'm going with that because that's where this little one's at right now. And so those are things, medically, when I have kids with seizures, I insist on a daily report form, not anecdotal, great day today. You guys ever write great day today? I'm not going to yell at you, but I'm going to say in mental health noting 101, we had to give 5 reasons why we considered it a great day. So that's why it's a lot easier to just say, were they responsive to adult directives? Were they on task? What was the level of prompting needed? What was this? What was that? And you kind of go into that through this piece right here, including medical, sleep, hours slept, got a blank. How many hours did they sleep last night? principal is actually the superintendent, but that I talked to today said, we have no idea on any of that. And I said, you need to find out. You need to ask, you need to see if that's something mom's able to do. It's 2 boxes she checks, and then we start out with that form for the rest of our day, but we have an idea of what's happened that night before. And that's kind of that medical noting 101. And the great day is, it tells me there was no behaviors, but other than that, it doesn't tell me what are you saying great about, right? And if multiple people work with someone, they might be great for that time because they just ran at recess, they came in, they got to do an art project, and then you go, oh, not a great day. You know, and then you end up in trouble there too. So I usually try to quantify those things out on several different forms that I'm happy to share. In fact, I already have a file already presented and together from that conference that I can share with you guys too.